My name is Giovanni Luca Champadia from Indiana University, and I'm here because it's my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Meeyoung Cha, our next speaker. Professor Cha holds a PhD in computer science from the Korea Advanced Institute of Technology in Seoul. And after a stint in various institutions in Europe and elsewhere, she's back and she now leads the social computing lab at KAIST. Mia is one of the leading researchers in social computing. She's made major contributions to the study of social media. In particular, as an example, one of her papers on Twitter followers has more than 2,500 citations on Google Scholar, I just checked. Um, so she's gonna talk about fake news online, which is a quite a hot topic these days. And by the way, she asked me to mention that if you like what you will see today, and I hope and trust you will, um, and you want to work more on these things, to go and talk to her later as she has funding for visiting positions at her lab. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mia for this talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanni, for the introduction. I'm Meeyoung Cha, and I do have funding for visitors. Just for coming to Korea and spend a week or two. You're welcome to just contact me, or students who want to work for internship. That's also great too. So so I am usually interested in topics that are kind of bad side of the internet. So I want to see how bad news spread, and how depressive mood spreads, and how fake news and rumors spread in the network. And this work, I started working on this topic for about 4 years now, and I didn't know this would be such an um, this year would be so focused on fake news. So I'm really thrilled that there's so much attention in this field, and it's been growing so much. And I would like to start my talk by sharing you one very, very fundamental health knowledge that all Koreans know. Okay, which is sleeping with the fan on will kill you. With the assumption that all the windows and the doors should be closed. And what I heard about this since I was young, and I believed in this until a few years back when I started looking into rumors. And the hypothesis is that when the door is closed, the windows is closed, and there's a fan, it's a small, relatively small room, and then the air starts circulating, and then your body stops feeling like you don't need to breathe anymore because the air is coming in anyway. So then you're gonna die. And Korea is a country where electricity bill is, and it goes up really exponentially, and it's really expensive. So a lot of homes still use fans, and we don't use air conditioning. So probably that's why we have a lot of things about fans. And this is so true in that here's a news clip from 2007, and it says, 5 people in their 20s and 30s randomly meet together to commit suicide, and their first attempt is to sleep together in a closed room with the fan on. And then they fail. And so this is how seriously people believe this myth in Korea. And I also hear this same news is now exported to Mexico, and please, somebody confirm to me if this is true. Okay, so this is a fun story, but probably you've seen fake news like these before. Drinking lots of soft drinks cause kidney as well as lung and other failures in your body, and celebrity so-and-so has died on Twitter. So on Twitter, Emma Watson, actress, she dies nearly every single year. And Britney Spears had died, Harrison Ford had died, Michael Jackson had died multiple times before he actually died. So these are all fun stories, but there are sometimes fake news that could cause really huge financial consequences. So here's one example from 2013. Has anyone seen this exact tweet on your Twitter stream? No? Okay, so this was Associated Press account. The AP account had been hijacked by hackers, and then they posted breaking news: two explosions in the White House and Barack Obama is injured. And this tweet, single tweet, because it was tweeted by a very credible account, had been retweeted 3,000 times. And assuming each account has about 200 or 300 followers, you see how rapidly this news had spread, and the stock price fell down quickly, marking down $136 billion down in S&P. It went back up within 15 minutes, but there was so much, disturbance in the stock market. And later on, AP created another account and said, "Hey, our account has been hijacked. That's a false news." But that tweet had not been retweeted so much as this one, as you might imagine. So how prevalent is this bad, false information, bad news in our internet? That would be really hard to measure, how prevalent this system is. And another question would be, can people actually detect fake news? So I brought in a survey results from the Pew Research. This was done in, I think, December 2016, asking more than 1,000 adults in the United States, and they asked, how bad is the fake news problem? And a lot of people, 88% of people said it's a great deal of confusion, or it's a somewhat a confusion. So it's a very, very serious problem. And then the next question they asked is, how confident are you able to tell something is fake or not? And 84% of people say they can very confidently or somewhat confidently determine something is fake or not. Okay. So a group at Stanford, Yuri Leskovich's group, took on this challenge and created a set of fake news. And then they also got real news, and then they mixed it half and half. So if you were to randomly pick, make a decision, you're going to get 50% right. And they asked they posed the same questions to Mechanical Turk users. And what are your guesses for how humans actually doing this task? 30%. 50? Anyone higher? No, the answer is a little better than random, 66%. Probably some people, like journalists, might be much better at determining, which one is fake news. But I want to argue in this talk that this is a really, really difficult task, because if you're just looking at a single tweet, you don't get the context for how things are spreading in the network. You just have one piece of information, and it's really hard to tell. But there are tasks that algorithms can do much better if we have lots of data about how things are spreading, and if we have some knowledge base about what the topic is about, and then algorithm can determine much, much better which one is fake or not. So I'm going to argue how we can do that from the next slides. All right, so the premise is that if you just look at a single piece of information, it's really hard to tell something is fake or not. But if you're looking at the entire network and see how it's spreading, what kinds of people it's spreading through, then you might have a more educated guess about which one is fake or not. So to do that, we need really, really good data set. And we do have really large data set in my lab. We basically have three and a half years worth of entire tweets on Twitter. That's not a sample, it's a complete tweets. So this is from the first few years of Twitter. At the time, nobody was crawling Twitter, and I asked Twitter to give me whitelisted, account so that I can crawl the network really, really fast. So we have about nearly 2 billion tweets, nearly 2 billion follow links, and 54 million users. Now that we have complete tweets, not exactly complete because we don't have the private tweets, but we have all the public tweets. Now we can go back in this time and look at which ones are fake news and which ones are, real news, like whatever that's on CNN, BBC. And for the sources for fake news, we resorted to Snopes.com. This is a website that lists all the fake news that happened in the world. And it also shows you when the news started, what are the relevant keywords, and how it ended. was it actually a false claim or it turned out to be true. So we can determine whether something happened during this 3 years and a half event time, because we don't want to capture some events that has been going on for a decade, right? We just want to look at some fresh event that happens within this 3 years time span and see how false and true news spread. And sounds very simple, but this takes a lot of time, and luckily we have graduate students to do these tasks. Okay. So these are some examples of the fake news that we look at. So Nicole Kidman has sex change operation. We classify this as a fake news because of false news because we don't know. Only Nicole Kidman would know. So it's something that could be unverified. We say that that's a fake news. And the same, Lady Gaga sex change. Emma Watson died, but she didn't die. And Bigfoot has been found, and there would be a rectangular iPhone, but we never saw that. So that's a false news. For the opposite, for the control group, for the popular news, we just looked at, we started with 100 popular news that happened that year, and then we looked for the matching keywords. Okay, so now you know that we have a set of false news and set of really true news that actually happened. And here's right. So I can give you, I can talk about this probably without the slides. So once we have good amount of fake news and good amount of real news, then we can compare how they are spreading in the network. And we are able to do this kind of study because we have the complete trace of all the tweets, and we also have the complete follower graph of the network. So we can see how, we can compare their different shapes. Oh, great. So let me, given the time, let me just skip this one. Okay, so there are 3 different kinds of patterns that we find from this data set. And these are based on theory. Theory meaning that when we started this work, we saw that there are tons of research from psychology, sociology. Some of them date back to the Second World War time. And they have lots of hypotheses about how rumors are spreading, but it was not tested with large amount of data. As you might imagine, it was impossible to do that. So we started collecting all these theories, and then we try to find the matching data or the matching feature from the data, and then that's why we call them theory-based, because we bring in like 25 different hypotheses from sociology, psychology, and then we individually use them as features in our study. So the first pattern is temporal. For real news, you could immediately imagine something like a 24-hour news cycle. At first, everybody talks about it. On the x-axis is the time, or in terms of days, and the y-axis is how many people or how many tweets are about that topic. So for non-rumors or true news, after the initial few days, everybody loses interest. But for rumors and fake news, it keeps coming back again and again and again. And that was really evident for a lot of fake news. So to model that, we can think of a model that has a one peak and has a long tail. And for the fake news, you have some periodic external shocks coming into that model. So once we have a model, then we can fit the features of the model as the features. And two of the most important features that we find is what is the periodicity of that external shocks that make the small, spikes, and some of the offsets related to that external shocks. The real news do not have that, that offset, or it's just a long single cycle, versus the fake news would have very short cycles. The second pattern is structural. So here is a single rumor, a single non-rumor, and the nodes are individual users, and the links are when somebody retweets or mentions to the other person's tweet. So you immediately see some differences. For example, in case of the non-rumors, it's a typical cascade network. A lot of people are connected because they are influential users, and you see large connected components. But when it comes to rumors, you see large set of singletons. People talk about rumors, but nobody responds to them. They're just their tweets are heard, but they're not responded. So it's all very disconnected. And also when we compare the degree of these networks, for non-rumors, we see that information flows from relatively high degree to low degree users. It's kind of like the two-step of flow information theory by Lazarfeld. But for rumors, information starts from relatively very low degree users, and when there are enough people talking about it, then maybe one or two celebrity persons will join and talk about it. So people who have high influence need lots of social proof before they join this conversation about uncertain topics. So they pose very different patterns, and all these patterns can be turned into a number of different features. And some of the important features for rumor was fraction of the singletons in the network and the fraction of the diffusion from low to high degree networks, high degree users. And the last one was linguistic patterns. We were looking at only English tweets at this point, and we use tools like Luke and Vader. These are automated tools that you can use to study what fraction of the words are positive, negative, or what fraction of the words contains things related to persuasion or uncertainty. So there are tons of different linguistic features that you can automatically get from the data set. And what we find is rumors often start with disclaimers like, I heard that, or so and so says that, I'm not sure. But here are some examples. So the rumors, as they spread, people already say that this might be a rumor, but here it goes. Because once it turns out to be false, you don't want to, you don't want to be blamed for that. So there are lots of disclaimers and lots of negations in the language. Just heard on the radio, blah, blah, blah. Right. So once we take all these features related to temporal, structural, and linguistic, and we run, and there were in total, I think, 77 features, and we do feature selection to make sure that we only get a handful of small, sizable features that are really representative, and we come down with 11 features. And here's a comparison, but ultimately what we show is there had been some other work that were non-theory driven, that were just looking at all the features that they could get from the data set, and our results were performing much better, especially in terms of recall of the prediction task. So if you look at it, the precision and the F1 scores are above like 0.9, and precision is like above 0.995, 934. These are really excellent results. But if you think about it, we are looking at really rumors that's already finished propagating, right? Because these are events that we already know that it already spread it. So even if we know that this is rumor or not, the damage has been done. So how do we reduce that gap of reducing the time between when events are spreading and how fast can we determine? So this work that was published this year was motivated by that exact limitation of our previous approach, and we thought temporal features were the most predictive ones, but they take a lot of time. They take a long time to accumulate. To see the cycle of the spreading, you need to have maybe at least like 10 days or 1 month, but that's too long of a time on Twitter. So here we are comparing different sets of features. What if we assume that we don't have any structural information? Because structural information is really great, but individuals do not have that structural information. But usually we can easily get the linguistic information because individuals do see linguistic information, and you can also easily get something like user's degree because it's something very evident and visible in the network. So what if we use only part of these features, or what if we assume that maybe 10% of the features are gone? then how well can these algorithms perform? So this is a comparison of that. And what we show is that when we just use user's degree and linguistic features, even when we use the first 1 day to first 3 days, we can still have accuracy above zero point 0.8. That's much, much better than what humans can do. And 1 day, 3 days are okay, but can we do that faster? And some of the attempts we done is, can we actually look at the very first 30 tweets, 50 tweets, or 100 tweets? And that would happen within the time frame of usually minutes or within 10 minutes. So can we actually detect something is rumor or not within a few minutes time? And we can do that. And for that, we need to resort to more complex models like deep learning. And this is um, the brief motivation for using deep learning is that when we look at the conversation around rumors and fake news, you see lots of responses related to negation or people saying, I don't believe it, it's not true. So at the initial part of the diffusion, there's already lots of speculation about whether something is true or not. So that information need to be, if you just take the average average statistics about what fraction of the tweets are negation or not, that's not very informative. But if you look at how the conversation is spreading, then we need to have some module to keep the previous states and put that back into the calculation, which is exactly deep learning. So the deep learning results show that when we use 30 tweets or 50 tweets, we don't have that 0.9 accuracy or F1 score, but we can still get relatively reasonable states like 0.7, 0.75, 0.77. Okay. So this concludes that you can actually detect things with algorithms and it's really promising, and we're just trying to push the gap much shorter and increase accuracy at the moment. So here's how our algorithms might be implemented. So this was a very popular news that showed the spread of the radioactive water from Japan. And if you just see a tweet like this and with a very polished image of how things are spreading, and it looks like a typical news, and it's really hard for individuals to tell whether this particular news is true or false. But the algorithms then go back into the spreading network or look at the topic and say, does the title match with the content, or where was this picture taken, and is the content coherent, or when was the image produced? And it seems out that this particular news, that this image just describe how the waves, the tsunami happened in 2011 in the Fukushima event. It doesn't show the radioactive propagation, but it's just showing you the waves of the tsunami. So fake news can be really difficult, really challenging to tell when it's bringing in completely, maybe mixing too relevant but not matching information together, and then a new fake news is produced. So okay, so besides our work, there are other teams that are looking into AI to debunk fake news. Some of the projects are like FIM from the European Union, Truthy from the Indiana University, and also Emergent from Columbia University. I think these are groups of journalists working on the challenge. And there's also fake news challenge that's going on at the moment. And different teams are looking at different perspectives. So some teams are looking at mapping information into geography, so that when people are talking about, say, London riots, but let's say that those tweets had been generated in Romania, then it means that it's more likely that these are fake news. And other teams are also looking at images inside the content. They do image deep learning and try to see whether the images had been manipulated, like in the case of Hurricane Katrina. There was an image that spread where it's a flooded street and you see sharks in the water, but it was a manipulated image. So you can see there's a lot of deep learning of the image on the images like CNN that gets into use as well. And here's a fascinating work by my mentor, Lada Adamik. She was looking at how fake news gets spread on Facebook posts. And it's the diffusion network is sort of similar to what we see. It's not a it's very shallow. It's very deep and it's very narrow. And the red nodes here are snoped nodes, meaning that when somebody posts something and then you reshare, and then someone comments on your reshared post that, oh, this article had appeared on Snope.com, meaning that, oh, it's likely fake. But when you see the red node article that had been snoped, it doesn't get propagated anymore. So it's like, ending the propagation. But still, there are some people who continue to reshare the content. So it's producing like a long chain of cascades. So there are people looking into what are the particular shapes, cascade, shapes of these rumors and fake news. And listening to all the talks from the first day and the second day related to the brains, I kind of added the slide at the last minute and wanted to pose a question to some of the people here. We have a lot of data about what people shared on Twitter. Some people are interested in sharing bad news. Some people are interested in sharing correction news. A lot of people are bad news are more likely to spread and they're more likely to gain lots of attention. And can we also, we know what they have posted before participating in the event. So what their daily interests were. And if we were able to bring in some people to the lab and have their, have their whatever activity in the brain scanned, would we be able to find why some people are more likely responding to particular types of news? And would some people have just a part of the brain that's more pro-social? They feel happy when they're engaging in pro-social activities. So this maybe there would be a possibility of looking at fake news together with some of the brain research. Okay, so let me wrap up my talk by saying the web and the social media data are making us, now we can look at how the world is consuming or producing information. And there are some tasks that human beings are not particularly good at, but there are these tasks can be helped by artificial intelligence tools. I personally do not think that AI should determine something is fake or not. It could only give us a guide that there's a high probability that this is spreading in a similar fashion as other fake news or rumors. And then the decision should be made by human beings. But it's going to just make us smarter, I think. And we shouldn't really be afraid of AI taking over humans' tasks. That's my personal view. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mia. We have time for a couple quick questions. There.
Hi, thank you for the great job. One of the question I have is where the linguistic features you use include a lot of like really or fake or those kind of words which represent the people actually thoughtful
Right.
about the news. So I think one of the research it implies is that like at each human level, like each personal level, people only have like 66% of accuracy, but collective intelligence, like filtering over and over about the whole doubt or suspicion,
Right.
make reveal whether it's fake or not. So does it mean like kind of supporting collective intelligence, you think?
Mm-hmm. Right. So the deep learning model is utilizing all those, the changes of the tone of the discussion in deciding whether something is fake or not. So if there would be some collaborative framework, so people can, vote together and see how other people think about particular piece of information. It might be possible, but for now, our information consumption is very alone, right? You just read your stream yourself, but we don't jointly discuss that, and that would be also challenging to do because there's so much information that we have to consume every day. So it would be brilliant to come up with some solution that's utilizing crowdsourced decisions, right?
One last question, please.
So for the spreaders of rumors and fake news, I think there are also like many bot accounts and spammers. So they may get created in a very large scale and they imitate human beings and they disguise themselves. So how do these existing methods deal with the emerging challenges of automated accounts?
Right. So there are few people also in this room who study like the bots in Twitter, and then there are reports that say like quite large fraction of the Twitter accounts now are bots. For this study, at least, this was data from 2009. There were not many bots at the time, so this data is a little safer from that side. But once bots really mimic human beings, and I don't know what the pattern would change, and some of the features that we find relevant may no longer be relevant, but maybe then a new set of features could turn out to be relevant.
Okay, let's thank again the speaker.